In 2005, a whole new generation of Wonderkids were looking to make their impact in the world of football. But of those, who failed to reach that early promised potential? Amongst the most promising young goalkeepers in world football, Libis Andres Arenas is aged just 17 on Football Manager 2005. He was showing enough potential to earn the starting spot with Envigado in Colombia. Within a year, scouts from Lazio would identify the player as a long-term solution to their goalkeeping position. But that transfer would be ill-fated. Not wanting to waste a valuable non-EU spot on such a young player, he'd return to his homeland on loan without making an appearance. 7 years later, he'd be without a club altogether after a number of poor spells with other sides in South America. A product of Anderlecht's famed youth system, Jonathan Legear would emerge in the mid-2000s as a potential successor to Christian Wilhelmsen. Aged just 17, he was already displaying some promising athleticism and technical attributes as he slowly established himself in the first team with the Belgian Giants. Over the course of 7 years at the club, he'd score 30 and assist 37 as he won 3 league titles and even 2 senior international appearances. 12 years later, and that early flame had burnt out. Just 13 league goals would arrive over the next decade as his opportunities began to diminish further and further. In 2024, he'd finally hang up his boots aged 37 with RCS Verlaine in the lower leagues. After impressing with Paraguayan club Tembatari, Werder Bremen would sign Nelson Valdez in 2001. In 4 years with the team, he'd scored 28 goals in 110 matches, as his side won a historic Bundesliga title and German Cup. This early career form made him a regular with his national team in no time, as he helped them qualify for the 2006 World Cup in Germany. Those early highs would be fleeting. After moving to La Liga in 2010, he'd partnered David Trezeguet at Hercules for an interesting but altogether disastrous upfront experiment as the La Liga side were relegated to the second tier. Struggling to find a permanent home, the next few years would see a lot of moves before he'd make his way to Seattle in the MLS, where just one goal would materialise in 31 league games. He would get his hands on the MLS Cup though, his third different league trophy of his career. A product of the Lyon youth system, Hatem Ben Arfa would play 92 matches with the French side, winning 4 back-to-back league titles. Attracting the interests of some of the world's biggest clubs, his next move would be to Marseille, where again he'd win a domestic title. Whilst he has enjoyed no shortage of silverware over the years, I think it's hard to say that Hatem Ben Arfa ever reached the highs promised early in his career. In fact, if you take away that anomaly season with Nice in 2016, where he scored 17 in 34 games, over the last decade of his career, the Frenchman would only score 21 league goals. With 4 successful seasons under his belt with Flamengo, Andre Bahia would make the move to Feyenoord in Holland for the 04-05 season. He'd continue that impressive form in the coming years as he helped his side to a KNVB Cup in 2008. Despite still being a regular in the side, 3 years later, he'd moved to Samsunspor in the Turkish Super League. This transfer would spark a decline in Andre's fortunes, as the once highly coveted player would be back in his homeland with Botafogo in no time at all. His career would finally conclude with Shonshan Belmar in Japan. The product of the famed Le Havre youth system, Gerard Houllier would bring Anthony Tallec to Merseyside in 2002, and it's not surprising to see why. With exceptional pace and stamina, this was a striker who looked to have a huge potential in England's top flight. But in 17 league appearances with the club, he would fail to find the back of the net once. By 2007, Liverpool had given up on the striker and moved him to Le Mans in France, where his struggles would continue. In 2015, Greek club Atromitos brought him to the Super League, where he'd score 14 in 2 years. But his final seasons would be spent as a journeyman in Romania and the lower leagues of his own nation, before eventually retiring in 2021. The opening goalscorer of Euro 2008, Vaclav Sverkos, having made an impressive start to his career with Baník Ostrava in the Czech Republic, Borussia Mönchengladbach would sign him ahead of the 2003 season. Whilst he did score 17 goals in 76 games, he never truly adapted to German football. Over the remainder of his career, he'd ply his trade in Austria, France, and Greece, but his best form would always be in the colours of Ostrava, who he would return to a number of times later in his career. Maybe the most famous football manager wonderkid of all time, Freddy Adu. Back in 2004, he's lining up for DC United. He'd make an immediate impact at the club, scoring 11 times in the next 3 years as the capital side looked to have a superstar on their hands. With the world at his feet, many of Europe's biggest clubs were vying for his signature, but it would be Benfica who got their man. In the coming years, he'd struggle to find a permanent home at Benfica or anywhere in Europe, and before he knew it, he was back in the MLS with Philadelphia Union. You could say that was his final impactful spell at any club, as he scored 10 goals in 41 appearances. After leaving Pennsylvania, his career would slowly burn out, eventually retiring with Swedish side Österlen in 2021. Back in 2004, Paul Gallagher was amongst the most talented youngsters in Premier League competition. Despite being just 19 years of age, he's coming off a 26 appearance season in England's top flight, as he became an integral member of Graham Souness's side. With the departure of the latter, his minutes would rapidly diminish, as he went out on loan to Stoke, Preston, and Plymouth Argyle. 4 seasons with Leicester would follow, before he'd find a permanent home with Preston North End. 313 games later, and in 2021 he'd finally hang up his boots. Whilst he did have an impressive career in England's second tier, that early promise was surely not fulfilled. A variety of players from the world of mid-2000s football, although all of their journeys were unique, each of them would unfortunately fail in their aspirations to reach the pinnacle of our sport.